Okay, I think we're going to get started now. Good morning, everyone. You can do a little call and response this morning if you want. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Okay, much better. I hope that gets you in the mood. For those that don't know me, my name is Scott Slifka. I have the pleasure of being the mayor of West Hartford, and it is an honor for me to be here today for the 20th annual celebration of the life of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. Please begin by giving a healthy round of applause to the Conard High School Jazz Combo. The musicians with us here today are Stephen Alekna on the saxophone. Yep, please. Alex Chernish and Adam Guru on the piano. Brian Wilson on the bass. And Gary Battle on the drums. And their music director is Scott Porter. Now, a little info about our jazz combos. We have one at each of our high schools, and they alternate performances at this special event. The Conard Jazz Combo is a student-run group that performs throughout the Hartford area. Over the past few years, they've had the opportunity to perform in Austria, Germany, Switzerland, and Italy while on the Euro tours, and in Boston at the Berkeley Jazz Festival. They arrange music for their own combo, as well as play jazz standards with their own flair. Please give them one more round of applause. As I said at the beginning, today marks West Hartford's 20th annual celebration of Dr. King's life, a spiritual leader who changed the course of American history. I've had the pleasure of welcoming you for the past 12 years, and I follow my good friends and past mayors, Jonathan Harris, Rob Bouvier, and Nan Glass. Now, since 1997, since our first event, nearly 1,000 West Hartford public school children have participated in this event with their school's choir and jazz band. So that's not just those who have attended. That's those who have been active participants in this ceremony. I think that's a pretty amazing legacy. And thank you. And during those 20 years, we've also heard some of the most inspiring speeches from our high school students that are on par with our keynote speakers and usually exceed the elected officials that are involved. And I'd like to ask all former participants, students, clergy, and keynote speakers to please stand and be recognized. Please. I know you're out there. Okay, don't be shy. Today's celebration of Dr. Martin Luther King's life is the result of a dedicated group of people who meet all throughout the year. They include Elena and Booker DeVaughn and Janet Jackson of the West Hartford African American Social and Cultural Organization, Judy Wyman of the West Hartford Human Rights Commission, Dr. Nancy DePalma and Marianne Ayers of the West Hartford Public Schools, and our own Renee McHugh of the town of West Hartford. Special thanks also go to the West Hartford Community Television Channel 5 for airing this event live, as they have every year for as long as I can remember, and to the Elmwood Senior Center for providing refreshments. How about the refreshments? Come on. And just a little note about how far we come. I had the pleasure of talking to Dr. DeVaughn for a moment just before we started, and he told me that the first several of these events were held in a conference room somewhere down the hall here. And now we have standing room only capacity, and it hasn't just been this year, it's been for many, many years. So thank you all for making this such a success. Now, we're not done with the introductions. I cannot forget the support to recognize my fellow elected officials and the support that they give to this event. I'll take the prerogative of introducing my town council colleagues first, beginning with Deputy Mayor Sherry Cantor. We have Ben Winograd next to her, and appropriately flanking her on the other side, Chris Williams. Inside joke, you'll get that. So Beth Kerrigan is here, and two of our very most important officials in town, Chief of Police Tracy Gove, and our Fire Chief Gary Allen. From the Board of Education, we have our Chair, Mark Overmeyer Velasquez, and our superintendent, Tom Moore. And at the state level, State Senator Beth Bayh, sitting in the audience here. And thankfully, standing relatively near each other, Joe Varengia and Brian Becker. This is where those of you who watched me at the beginning wonder what I might be doing. There she is. This is why I'm asking. I stand here for the 10 minutes before and trying to make sure I find everybody here. I always miss at least one. So she does get the privilege of being introduced all alone now, though. From the Board of Ed, Tammy Exum. There she is. Trust that's the last person I missed. Okay. Wonderful. So moving on, I'd like to just say a few quick words about another great group here in town who helps spread the message of civil rights year in and year out here in town. They are Hello West Hartford. Hello West Hartford believes that culture in our community is enriching, authentic, and cultural experiences are essential. Language and cultural barriers are broken down through mutual understanding. In our community, we have citizens embracing diversity and reaching out to neighbors in so many ways. Conard Hall juniors and seniors are encouraged to apply for Hello West Hartford's Dr. Karen List Global Ambassador Award, which recognizes students who make a difference. And information is at the school guidance offices at Conard Hall I think, as of February 1st. And there are 2 Hello West Hartford events coming up that we hope you can attend. The first is this coming Saturday, January 23rd. It's called A Taste of Culture, Multicultural Dining and Entertainment, Kora Kora Peruvian Restaurant, on Park, India and Bombay Olive Nepalese are sharing their specialties, and the East West Restaurant and Park sharing their specialties along with entertainment at a tavern night at Noah Webster House. You can register online at noahwebsterhouse.com and then click on Tavern Night to get tickets. The second event is the townwide cultural celebration at the Town Hall on April 25th from 5:30 to 8:30. This is the 5th year event, and it should not be missed. If you haven't been here, it's really amazing. Over 500 people have been here in the past, each time, celebrating through music, food, dance, and language. And Hello West Hartford invites you to join us for both or either of these events. And we have an event this evening. If this event is not enough for you, you can cap off the night with more discussion of Dr. King's life and legacy. The Solomon Schechter Day School and the West Hartford Public Schools are jointly presenting New Lands of Opportunity, a community conversation. That is tonight from 7:30 to 9 o'clock p.m. at the Solomon Schechter School over on Buena Vista Road here in West Hartford. It'll be an evening of thoughtful conversation with a panel discussion and Q&A with the audience to explore how the urban-suburban connections interplay with urban revitalization and its relationship to race, shared land, and access to opportunities. And the participants include Tom Moore, our superintendent, Andrea Casper from Solomon Schechter Day School, Reverend Damaris Whitaker from the United Church of Christ, Charmaine Craig, an environmental activist. It's facilitated by our own Mark Overmeyer Velasquez from the Board of Ed, and apparently I will be on the panel as well. And last but not least, this is always before I introduce our MC, this is always where I have been invited to share my own remarks, and I had a thought today that really this is about not hearing from elected officials, it's about hearing from the students who are so amazing. But this is the only event every year that my daughter Betsy insists on joining me for, and she's right here. And just before we walked in, hello? And just before we walked in, she pointed out to me out in the hallway that there's a project from many of the elementary schools here in town where students had to team up with a partner and express what they thought about Dr. King. And they're out here, and one of those was hers. So I thought instead of sharing my own words, I would just share hers and those of her friend Meryl, who filled it out with her. And this is one of those charts where it says the word freedom going down, and then there's a saying after every letter. So, F, fair is the right thing. R, rights are wonderful. E, everyone counts. E, equal rights, with an exclamation point. D, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., with, I believe, a heart after that one. O, opinions count. And M, many people treated equally. So, Betsy, thank you for giving me something to share. And with that, now officially begin our program with the introduction of our MC. We are very pleased to have as our MC Leslie Mays. Leslie is a reporter for NBC Connecticut. You can catch her reporting from the New Haven newsroom weekday mornings from 4:30 a.m., wow, God bless you, to 7 o'clock a.m. on NBC Connecticut Today, which means we're nearing the end of her day right now. On NBC Connecticut Today, Leslie enjoys being on scene covering the latest breaking news and is passionate about national political news and public health news. Before joining the NBC Connecticut team, Leslie served as a Washington bureau producer for Time Warner Cable News, where she covered both of President Obama's inaugurations and several State of the Union addresses. She also traveled across the country working with the political unit at New York One News, where she followed the Clinton and Obama campaigns prior to the 2008 presidential election. Leslie is a member of the National Association of Black Journalists, and please give a very warm welcome to our MC, Leslie Mace. Leslie, welcome.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. How's everybody doing today? Happy Martin Luther King Day. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for that fine introduction. Those things are always kind of awkward when someone's like reading about you and talking about you in front of you, but you made it easy, so it wasn't bad. So thank you. I don't want to take too long up here, but I just want to remark on something that I noticed in coming in here. I've only been in Connecticut for about a year, so this is my first Martin Luther King Day in the state, but obviously not my first in life. Thank you. But one thing I noticed as the room started to fill up and on my way in here was just how many different backgrounds are represented at today's celebration here in West Hartford. And oftentimes I've gone to some of these events and sometimes you only see African Americans or you only see minorities. So I think it is a wonderful thing and a true embodiment of Dr. King's dream that so many people are coming together from all different walks of life today to celebrate his memory. So thank you, and a round of applause to all of you, especially to you young folks. You know, it's a fun way to spend a day out of school, but you're here doing something really good. So thank you. And often, you know, they say it's a day on, the MLK holiday, and not a day off. So this is a good way to spend your day and your morning giving back and remembering the legacy of Dr. King. Anyway, I'm going to get out of your way, but first we're going to get this program started with a prayer. That prayer is going to come from Rabbi Deborah Cantor. Now, from every year to year, the MLK committee, they thoughtfully select a member of a different faith community to give the opening prayer for this program. This year, we're fortunate to have Rabbi Cantor. Now, she's an Ellington native, and she earned her BA from Brandeis and was ordained by the Jewish Theological Seminary in 1988. And that made her the first Connecticut woman to become a conservative rabbi. Let's give it up for her for that. Hold on, there's more. Wait. Now, during her 28-year career, Rabbi Cantor has not only witnessed a change in the conservative movement, but she's often been at the forefront of significant developments. Now, she is presently the spiritual leader. I don't want to pronounce this wrong, so if you would say it for me.
B'nai Tikva Shalom.
There you go, in Bloomfield. Now we want to please give a warm welcome to her, but after she delivers the opening prayer, you're going to, if you could all stand up to give that welcome, we're going to remain standing and have the Pledge of Allegiance. Rabbi Cantor.
Long ago, the psalmist declared, Pitchu li sha'arei tzedek, open for me the gates of justice and righteousness. I will enter into them and give thanks to the Lord. O Lord, merciful one, source of all life, we gather here this morning to offer thanks. How fortunate we are to live in this land where we have the freedom to join together, to worship as we choose, to vote and to speak out, to live in security and safety. How we cherish these rights and freedoms, even as we acknowledge how many people have had to fight for them, and how the struggle to safeguard the ideals and institutions which are our country's glory is a persistent and urgent challenge. Oh God, we stand before you this day in humility. We admit that America has always been a land of great contradictions. Our country was founded on the principle that all human beings are created equal, yet we nevertheless embraced and profited from the horrors of slavery. And slavery's legacy of racism and hate of demonizing some people as the other continues in our own day, across our land, not only far away, but in our own neighborhoods. Remind us, God, of what we so easily forget, that you have created us, all of us, in your image, that each one of us reflects a spark of the divine, that each of us is of inestimable value, irreplaceable, and that we live in relationship to you, God, and to one another. As the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. wrote, as he sat in a jail cell in Birmingham, Alabama in 1963, he said, all life is interrelated. We are all caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied into a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one affects all. My friends, today is indeed a day to celebrate the life and teachings of a great man and the achievements of the civil rights movement, which he came to symbolize. But today is also a day to be profoundly dissatisfied, to declare that the work is not done, to come together and act. Black lives matter, justice matters, legal justice and economic justice. Truth matters, love matters. In the words of Dr. King, let us be among those creative dissenters who will call our beloved nation to a higher destiny, to a new plateau of compassion, to a more noble expression of humanness. And let us say together, Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi. Now if you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. So now it is time to talk about the students, what this program is really all about today, the young people here. Every year, students from 4 grade levels at the 2 West Hartford public high schools are invited to deliver the student perspective on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s life. Students are asked to compose a paper on how Dr. King influenced their lives or the history of the United States, and then read that paper before a committee of social studies teachers. Now, 2 students were chosen from among all of the applicants, and those 2 students are Taylor Andrew Steer of Conard High School and Marielle Sophia Carrera Maynard of Hall High School. Let's give it a round of applause for those 2 young people. All right, so first we are going to have Taylor come up so he can speak.
A lot of familiar faces. You may be asking why I'm standing here before you. Well, I'm a little surprised too, being a blonde-haired, blue-eyed white boy. What could I have to do with Dr. Martin Luther King? I'm not a straight-A student. I dropped sports to be part of the theater, and I'm not the most popular kid in my class. But none of that matters. When I heard that I was going to be the speaker, I thought there is no way that me of all people would be here. I eventually came to the conclusion that it's not about what I've done. It's about how much I care. Last year, I had the privilege of being in one of the most enlightening history courses. The teacher was absolutely amazing, and she sent me on a trajectory for social justice. Her name is Dr. Tracy Wilson, and she changed my life forever. I can't thank her enough for believing in me and giving me the chance to be a better person. The student who entered her class was nothing compared to the student who came out. Dr. Martin Luther King had a vision, a dream per se, of a world of freedom and justice for all. He wanted to see a world where a black man wouldn't be thrown in jail and beaten for drinking out of a white-only fountain. He wanted to see a world when parents didn't have to explain to their children the rules for what they should do when a police officer stops them. He wanted to see equality in the smallest ways that most of us take for granted. Although his convictions and ideals still apply today, as a nation, as a community, as individuals, we still have our growing pains. Even though we have come a long way from a time when we used to enslave people of color, of a time when blacks were attacked with water hoses and dogs, we still experience subtle and explicit racism thriving today. I want to take a moment and share a personal growing pain that I experienced last year. For the first 2 months of U.S. history through the African American experience, I was the only white kid, the minority, in a sense. Me, blonde-haired, blue-eyed Taylor. We were discussing how the white man oppressed and continues to oppress people of color. I felt horrible, I felt wrong, and above all, I felt guilty. And then I understood. This was my form of racism. My guilt prohibited me from seeing the larger picture. My guilt served no one. It was keeping me from my responsibility to the world, to becoming an activist for human rights. It was then I remembered Gandhi's quote that we all know, "Become the change you want to see in the world." My discomfort of being, quote, the minority in that class guided me to a place of greater understanding. Instead of letting my discomfort lead me away from what is important, I learned to lean into it. I started talking with students of color about their experiences growing up in a mainly white town or being bused here. I wanted to hear their thoughts, their stories, their feelings. I was never a minority. My friends and my discomfort taught me compassion. It built my empathy and understanding of the world. However, I still have a lot of work to do. We still have a lot of work to do. Case in point, we call America the land of the free, but it has become the land of the fearful. The only way we can better ourselves and bring humanity back into balance is through change. My friend Mugdha recently gave a powerful speech to 5th graders at Charter Oak Elementary for Peace Day. A specific line of hers touched me deeply. Quote, "The heroes we look up to, Martin Luther King Jr., Mahatma Gandhi, Malala Yousafzai, they didn't have a grand master plan to achieve world peace. It happens bit by bit. It's a collaboration between every person on this planet." End quote. If a junior in high school understands this, then we all need to raise our awareness bar. In order to raise our bar, we must acknowledge that every person in this room is biased in some way, shape, or form. We live in a society of isms and phobias. When you are surrounded by these common reactions to differences that frighten us, we then absorb these fears. For starters, we continue to be prejudiced against women, people who identify as LGBT, people of color, the poor, cultures that confuse us, and religions that we know nothing about. The old, the young, the unattractive, the too attractive, the overweight, the underweight, you name it. There doesn't seem to be much discrimination against white men, though. Society has always told us to be different. But when we go out on a limb to make an honest change in our lives, which might be as simple as accepting who we are, society says, no, we don't like that. Since there is no way to satisfy society, we must learn to remain honest with ourselves. The current focus of prejudice in our country today is Islamophobia. In the greater sense, xenophobia, the irrational fear or hatred of foreigners or strangers. Dr. King once said during an interview for Ebony magazine, quote, "People fail to get along because they fear each other. They fear each other because they don't know each other. They don't know each other because they have not communicated with each other." End quote. The fear of Muslims today is no different than the fear of African Americans during the civil rights period. In school, it is said that we are taught history to gain better understanding of the world so it doesn't repeat itself. How is it then that after 50 years since the civil rights movement, we are in the same predicament? We will always have extremists on both sides who play into our fears. What we learned about our fears and biases 50 years ago is that they were irrational and many of them unwarranted. Let us learn the lessons that history has taught us. Let us learn to see our differences for what they are. Last year, Dr. Wilson challenged our class to dream, to really make a difference. The form this dream took was the creation of the very first African American History Day at Conard High School. We were aiming to raise awareness of the African American experience. The forum consisted of different speakers each period, and it concluded with a panel. The speakers came from all walks of life, from the corporate world to the artistic. My friend Tatiana and I were the moderators of a panel that included several members of the West Hartford Police Department. This day was well attended and the feedback was tremendous. Many benefited from this day. Even though we were focusing on the Black experience, we were able to speak openly and freely. This is what sparks change. Dr. King was assassinated on that fateful day of April 4th, 1968 in Memphis, Tennessee. His lessons did not die with him. His voice was and continues to be a guiding light for many of us today. His day may be overlooked by many. It's a day off from school or work, a day to sleep in and relax. But to those who are discriminated against, as well as those who want to end discrimination. Today means everything. A day that we should come together as one because it marks a time when barriers of social injustices were broken. Much of Dr. King's dream has been realized. He preached the importance of nonviolent protests. Occupy Wall Street is a contemporary example of this. Many of the original leaders in the civil rights movement held or continue to hold political positions in our country today, such as John Lewis, Andrew Young, and Julian Bond. As we all know, Barack Obama was elected president in 2008 as a direct result of the civil rights movement had in our country. Yet, as progressive as it is to have a black president, his presidency has also highlighted a deeper layer of overt and subtle racism within our country. I want us to quickly think of discrimination as an onion. Yes, an onion. The civil rights movement has peeled off the yellow skin. However, we still have an onion, and it continues to sting our eyes. There are infinite layers of this onion due to the prevalence of extremism in our country today. Government land in Oregon is currently being taken over by extremists. By definition, these white extremists would probably be labeled terrorists if they practice Islam. The Christian KKK continues to thrive. Have you ever heard of them being labeled terrorists? Martin Luther King once quoted, "Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter." What started out as a civil rights movement has now broadened into a human rights movement. You see, we still have an onion. I have a close friend that has inspired me as much as Dr. Wilson and Dr. King. She's ambitious, engaging, lively, smart. In fact, Tatiana, I want to be you when I grow up. Her dedication and enthusiasm helped create African American History Day. She has the attitude that says, "I'm going to change this world." I originally wanted to co-lead this speech with Tatiana, a black girl, white boy, standing side by side delivering Dr. King's messages. Sounds good, right? So in the spirit of Dr. King's call for civil disobedience, we will now perform a small nonviolent protest. Tatiana, will you please come forward for your short speech? Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce Tatiana Dennis.
Hello, everyone. Taylor, that was a wonderful introduction. I don't think I can even live up to it. Okay. Martin Luther King Day. We know what he did. We know what he's brought us to. We know what Harriet Tubman has done. We know what Martin Luther King done, Sojourner Truth. But what other inventors do we know? What about Albert Richardson, who invented the rudder turn? Benjamin Bradley, the steam engine for warships. Benjamin Thornton, the answering machine. Charles Brooks, the street sweeper. Garrett Morin, the inventor of the traffic signal and the machine for gas masks. The list goes on. Until this list is learned in schools, we still have a problem. We know about Albert Einstein. We know about Queen Elizabeth. We know about other inventors. We don't know about the black ones, and that's the problem. Until we learn this, we can't do anything. They will give us only enough to show that the history books, yeah, there were black people that have done something good, but they won't give us the detail, and that's an issue. Me and Taylor, we did the panel for Black History Day. That was amazing. And we're doing a second annual Black History Day now. The outcome was amazing. And that's amazing for me, because an idea is nothing without people behind you. And there were many people behind us. Dr. Wilson, she was an angel the entire way. She guided us the entire way. She was our Martin Luther King. She was our Martin Luther King. Students will grow up uneducated about the black inventors. They'll think, what have black people done besides write raps, sports? What have they done for us? But they'll think about every other white inventor and think that white people are superior to blacks, but we're supposed to be equal. Why are we not learning this? The future is in the eyes of the children, as everybody knows. So until the children are educated on how everyone has put a part in this society, in this world, nothing can change. I know my speech is a little on the rocks, I'm sorry. Yeah. Thank you, Taylor.
Thank you, Tatiana. So before I wrap up, I would like to say that it has been an honor here standing before you, sharing how this great man, Dr. Martin Luther King, has inspired my life. Talking about his dreams and ideals is an experience I will always remember. I want to personally thank my human rights teacher, Ms. Esposito, for helping me put this speech together. I would also like to thank Dr. Tracy Wilson for sparking my inner activist. Dr. Martin Luther King gave his life so his children and his children's children would have the opportunity to grow up in a more humane world. I want to leave challenging every person in this room. I want all of us to consider our personal isms and phobias. These are things we need to ask of ourselves and then talk about. I want us to talk with our friends, family, and neighbors. We all have the power to make a difference in this world, and we all have influence. Again, I'm a blonde-haired, blue-eyed white boy. I'm ready to make a change. Are you? Thank you.
Good stuff there. Thank you, Taylor and Tatiana. Now we are going to hear from our other speaker, Miss Maria.
Good morning. My name is Marielle Cray Maynard, and I am a sophomore at Hall High School. I would like to start with saying I am truly honored to speak with you all today about the personal impact of Dr. Martin Luther King's legacy. I'd like to tell you a little bit about my ethnic background. I'm half Puerto Rican on my mom's side and half Black Caribbean on my dad's. I'm a proud product of diversity. Both of my ethnicities allow me to enjoy their rich culture, heritage, food, and music. So yes, I am of mixed race and do not fit into one specific racial class. I embrace and appreciate both of my ethnic backgrounds, and I am fortunate to say that I am a living representation of Dr. King's vision. I have a diverse group of friends at Hall, and our races have never been a problem in terms of friendship. We do not judge each other based on our race, but rather who we are as individuals. My race does not prohibit me from taking advanced courses at school. I am able to advocate for myself without the fear of jeopardizing the well-being of my family and my friends. And best of all, in just 2 years, I, a Hispanic Black American benefiting from the Voters Act of 1965, will be able to vote. I attribute many of these privileges to Dr. King's work and to the work of many other civil rights leaders and activists who have sacrificed so much to allow me to live my life like this. I am grateful that our parents and prior generations upheld these privileges through teaching us about equality, tolerance, and justice. I would like to say that though these achievements exist in our town, our state, and our country, sadly, it is no secret that across the United States, racism is still prevalent in our neighborhoods, public places, and especially institutionalized racism in our public schools. When I attended elementary school at Smith, I never paid attention to how diverse my peers were. Diversity was my norm. I came to school every day and accepted people with all different backgrounds. We would all play and learn together, not be concerned about our different races. And personally, I believe that's how school should be for every child. Unfortunately, this experience somewhat ceased its existence while attending middle school. I began to see friend groups defined by race. Some of the people in each friend group had started to create generalized racist stereotypes about people in other groups. Out of ignorance, certain students, typically more students of color, would occasionally be seen as rude and uninterested in school, while others, the white students, would sometimes be seen as uncultured, rich, and snobby. I knew these statements were not true about everyone, and it angered me to see people succumb to these stereotypes just because it was easier to accept them rather than challenge them. In addition to that, I was frustrated by how some teachers and peers performed and continue to perform acts of racism without recognizing they are doing so because they have become such a common cultural norm. Although these acts may be unintentional, the result is still the same, making people feel inferior about their race. So yes, even in West Hartford, we still have ways to go before we completely embody Dr. King's vision. This past summer, I had the opportunity of visiting the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial in Washington, D.C. Walking into the park, you typically would see the magnificent piece of artwork that is a statue of Dr. King overlooking the pristine tidal basin. What caught my eye was the array of his powerful quotes on the wall that surrounded his statue. I noticed how relevant his sayings were to the many issues regarding race that still exist in today's society, and I reflected how exact his teachings were to the goodness of humanity and how we as a country have failed to prove that so. And one quote, he said, "We shall overcome because the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. But tell me, how can the family of a 17-year-old African-American male armed with tea and Skittles who was unjustly shot because of false suspicions made on the racial stereotypes and whose killer remains unharmed and alive believe the moral universe bends towards justice?" Dr. King also states, "The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands at times of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy." But why do we often believe a person is at the right state of mind and that their actions are justified when they are not challenged or not put into a situation where they are privileged? Dr. King reminds us that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, and whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. We all must be concerned about racism because none of us can shelter ourselves from what happened to Michael Brown, Tamir Rice, Trayvon Martin, Sandra Bland, and all the other precious people who have been targeted because of their race. It is our responsibility to abolish this because ignoring racism is welcoming racism. Let us say no more to "I didn't do anything because it didn't concern my race." No more to "I didn't do anything because it didn't concern my town, my house, my family, my friends, and any other excuse. Let's take out the "my" and add "our," because racism is our problem. It affects the whole human race whether we choose to accept it or not. It should be our goal to end racial stereotypes, racial barriers, and promote equality. Let us not forget that it is never too late to achieve Dr. King's dream and create a free, equal nation. Thank you.
Good job. Let's hear it for those two very impressive young people who seem to be wise beyond their years. That was excellent. Excellent, excellent. Speaking of these two, when you guys leave Town Hall today, there is a Martin Luther King Jr. plaque that is in the lobby near the elevators. And on that plaque, it includes the names of everyone who has given a speech here, every student who's given a speech here since 1997. And of course, today we are going to be adding two names to that plaque, those of Taylor and Marielle. So once again, let's give a round of applause to these two. And thank you, guys. So now it is time for some music. Let's get excited about that. We're going to be hearing from the KP Singers, who come from King Philip Middle School. Now, the KP Singers is an auditioned group of 7th and 8th graders. They perform a number of times throughout the year, both at KP and then also all over the community. Now, this spring, the KP Singers are going to be competing as part of the Great East Festivals. That's exciting. Yay! They're going to be performing, and they do perform under the direction of Brian Jones. Now, today they're going to be singing MLK by U2 and Shine on Me, arranged by Rollo Dilworth. They're accompanied by Sam Urich, who is the choir director of Conard High School. So let's have them come on up for their performance. All right, everybody, let's give another round of applause to the KP Singers for that wonderful performance. Such big voices from such young people. That was really, really good. So thank you guys for being a part of today's celebration. I now have the honor of introducing the person who is going to introduce our keynote speaker, Ms. Christine Johnson-Hatcher. She's going to be telling us about the keynote. Ms. Johnson-Hatcher is a West Hartford resident and a member of the West Hartford African American Social and Cultural Organization, who is a sponsor of today's event.
Good morning, good morning. Thank you so much. I'm very happy and excited to be here this morning. This year's keynote speaker is Dr. Constance Belton Green, a renowned consultant on diversity and race. Ms. Green is the first African-American woman to receive a Juris Doctor from the University of Connecticut School of Law. Her passion for social justice and education led her to a second career in education, including education consultant for the Connecticut Department of Education and as Chief Diversity Officer at Eastern Connecticut State University. In 2003, she received her doctorate in education from Columbia University. She is one of the founders of Connecticut Women's Education and Legal Fund and has served as a commissioner of the Connecticut African American Affairs Commission. Connie currently serves on the Hillstead Museum Board, as well as on the Outreach Ministries Committee of Asylum Hill Congregational Church. Ms. Green is the 2012 recipient of the George W. Crawford Black Bar Association Trailblazer Award. In 2015, she was honored as the 2015 Woman Philanthropist by the Aurora Foundation, an organization whose mission is to be a catalyst for positive change in the lives of women and girls. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Green.
Thank you so much. And you know, this particular day of being able to come to West Hartford and see all the students and the amazing, thoughtful presentations makes my day. I think we're in good hands if we have students like this going forward. And the musicians and the vocalists, thank you. You are too an inspiration of what this day means. So I thank you for inviting me today to be a part of this celebration to honor the birthday, the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. I am truly honored to be with you. And my topic, I will be very brief because you've had so many amazing things. I can't top either of you in terms of your presentations, Taylor and Mike. I cannot top that, so you all have done a wonderful job. But let me just take a few minutes, and I want you to focus on this word, audacity, audacity. And I'll bring it up periodically as I talk a couple of minutes. So let me start with Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. had audacity. He was a visionary, a leader of the civil rights movement. We know about his life and what he accomplished, but let me remind you of just a snapshot. Born on January 15, 1929 in Atlanta, Georgia, by 1955, he had received his PhD from Boston University. In 1963, Dr. King was named Man of the Year by Times Magazine, and in 1964, at the age of 35, now some of you may think that's old, but that's really young. At the age of 35, he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. We acknowledge his legacy in dismantling segregation, of achieving voting rights legislation, and for his work on international conflicts and advocacy for the poor, no matter color or creed. Dr. King taught us about the power of words, the power of nonviolent civil disobedience, the power of dreams for equity and equality and fairness in a global society. Dr. Martin Luther King, in my estimation, was the ultimate change agent. During my lifetime, I have had careers as a consultant, as a lawyer, and as an educator. I have worked in areas of race and justice, but more recently, I have been doing some historical research on the lives of African American women lawyers, not only in Connecticut, but throughout the United States. In the spirit of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., I'd like to tell you about two women who refused to set limitations on what they could do, what they might achieve, or how they might make a difference in the lives of others. They had what I call the audacity to dream and the tenacity to act. History informs the present. I think one of the students mentioned that we need more history of African Americans. History does inform the present. And so the two African American women that I want to tell you about are Constance Baker Motley and Bessie Warren Bennett. Some of you may know the names, and others of you may not, so bear with me. I want to tell you just a brief thing about both. So Constance Baker Motley was born in New Haven, Connecticut in 1921, and she dreamed of becoming a lawyer. After graduating from Columbia University Law School in 1946, she secured a position with the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, and she worked with Thurgood Marshall. If you remember, Thurgood Marshall went on to become U.S. Supreme Court Justice. Constance Baker Motley was one of the lawyers for the plaintiffs in the Brown versus Board of Education case. And that was a landmark desegregation case. In fact, it is credited with changing how we view segregation and desegregation. It really desegregated the schools. She also won, as lead counsel, 9 other civil rights cases before the United States Supreme Court. And this was during the 1960s. In 1966, Constance Baker Motley was nominated to a federal judgeship by President Lyndon Johnson, becoming the first African-American woman to a federal judgeship. Her appointment was to the Southern District of New York. One of my favorite photographs, and she's also written an autobiography that you can get, but one of my favorite photographs, and there are tons, Google her, there are tons of photographs of her, but one of my favorites is the scene of her walking with James Meredith out of the federal court building in New Orleans in 1962. They are being bombarded by picketers with all of these signs, townspeople with all of these signs, kind of hateful signs, opposed to her legal battle that she was waging to integrate higher education in the area. However, this photograph shows their resolve. With resolve, Constance Baker Motley and James Meredith continued to walk forward. The other woman I want to tell you about is Bessie Warren Bennett. She was born in Prairie View, Texas in 1938, but left the segregated South after graduating high school to attend Radcliffe College in Boston, Massachusetts. She was her high school valedictorian, and she was only 16 when she graduated. One of my favorite photographs of Bessie, and I knew her from law school, but one of my favorite photographs was taken as she is standing on the steps of a train platform in Texas, bound for Massachusetts. Bessie is wearing a neatly pressed two-piece dark suit with white blouse and white gloves. At first glance, you notice the correctness and reserve of her attire. And it seems to overshadow what I really notice is her audacity. At age 16, she is boarding a train to go to Radcliffe College. Standing near her are her parents, Samuel and Juanita Warren. But only Bessie is actually boarding the train. Bessie Warren Bennett dreamed of becoming a lawyer. After graduation from Radcliffe with honors, in 1958, she was accepted to law school. However, instead, she married her college sweetheart, John Bennett. Later, while balancing marriage and family, Bessie Bennett still dreamed of law school. In 1970, she entered the University of Connecticut School of Law, where she and I met. She graduated in 1973, and in 1974, she became the first African-American woman to practice law in Connecticut. So you understand, I do have this passion to really, because I think that as we know about some of these women in history, not the famous ones, I call them the ordinary women who do extraordinary things, it allows us to see a broader picture of what that Martin Luther King dream really means. But what about today? When I talk about these women, I call them audacious. They had audacity. But what about today? How audacious are we to follow our dreams? How audacious are we to have a vision for justice in our society? To work for greater access to better jobs and better schools and educational opportunity? How audacious are we to follow in the footsteps of men like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. or women like Constance Baker Motley or Bessie Warren Bennett? Recent data by Metro Hartford, the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving, and the Aurora Foundation indicate the power of an education in making a difference in one's life. They give one piece of data that I'd like to share with you. Women in Hartford County without a high school education have an average earning potential of $19,000 per year. Women who have a high school diploma have an average earning potential of maybe $26,000 a year. But more telling is, for those women who receive a bachelor's degree, the average earning potential jumps to $47,000 and more. I suspect that when we look closely at that data, you will also see the earning potential for the college graduate or beyond college graduate goes up over time, whereas when you look at for the person, the woman who has not even graduated from high school, that's going to level flat. So over time, we get an even bigger disparity. This kind of data reminds us why education still matters. And the people I've talked to you about were very much involved in education. And why it is paramount that every child have access to a quality education, including access to higher education. You know, when I heard the speakers and I've heard the music and all the students who've participated today, my thought was, wow, wouldn't it be amazing if every student in Connecticut had access to this kind of education that you have in West Hartford? One of the most powerful aspects of the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the African American women, the two women that I spoke briefly about, Constance Baker Motley and Bessie Warren Bennett, is their audacity to dream big dreams and to have a vision for how they were going to make a difference. You know, I think about that and all the people I read about. I've become this historian of sorts in terms of women in history. particularly African American women. And I note to myself, I want to be like them. I want my actions to matter. I want to make a difference in my community. I want to make my world a little bit better place to live. Now I ask, how about you? The audacity to dream and the tenacity to act. I thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Green. Thank you, thank you. And before we close today, we're going to hear some music from Conard High School's Voices of the World. I want to draw your attention to something you may have noticed out in the hallway while they're getting all set up for their performance. Out in the hallway, just outside of these doors, outside of the auditorium, there's some artwork that's hanging and also some essays. Those essays are the product of the children in the West Hartford public elementary schools. The children learned about the life of Dr. King as a part of their social studies and language arts curriculum on famous Americans. And the children read about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and his well-known speeches, his important contributions to our country, and then they wrote essays and poems about his life and also created artwork on Dr. King's message and how it relates to their own lives today. So we want to say congratulations to all of their kids, thank them for their work, and please just make sure you take some time to take a look at that artwork out in the hallway when you leave later today. Now, without further ado, please welcome the Conard High School Voices of the World Choir that is led by choral director Sam Urich. Voices of the World is one of several choirs at Conard High School. Voices of the World places a value on music of all of the world, including gospel and spirituals. Now, they are happy to be here today in the memory of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Their song selection today, and if you're a gospel fan or if you're familiar with gospel music, you should know these songs. They're going to sing I Need You to Survive by David Frazier, and also The Storm is Passing Over by Charles Albert Tindley. Take it away.
Good morning. Good morning, and if you so feel inspired to sing along, if you know the pieces, we absolutely welcome any voices that you want to offer. So if you start to get the piece or you understand what the melody is, or even if you just know the words, please feel free to raise your voice with us in song. To that point, also for the final song after our second, we'll do We Shall Overcome, and for that, Conard Senior Dijon Johnson will be providing the next lyrics for you. So you need to look down at your programs when it comes time for that. And for that one, please ask we all stand and sing We Shall Overcome all together. So please enjoy.
Thank you, thank you. Well, that just about wraps up things here. I want to say a special thank you to the voices of the world, and thank you all for being here today. If I could ask one favor, I'm told that there was some feedback cards that you guys received, so if you wouldn't mind taking a second just to fill that out so that the organizers can know what you liked about the program and how you think it can be improved for next year. You can hand that to someone at the door. Anyone who's near the exits, I think they have their hands up, so they'd be glad to take those from you. But again, thank you so much. Feel free to enjoy some refreshments provided by the Elmwood Senior Center, and we will see you all next year. Thank you.